Hello and welcome back to Microsoft Flight Simulator for part 2 of my first impression / review of the PMDG 737-700. Thank you very much for joining me in today's video, and in the first part, just as a brief reminder, I went over the price, the system specifications required to fly this aircraft, some of the features, or as many of the features as I could find that are simulated in this aircraft, a couple of omissions and reasons behind those omissions, most notably the EFB, and lastly I went through a flight deck tour, refamiliarising myself with the 737, which I have not flown in a long time. In this video, I'm going to be doing a full cold and dark tutorial. So we're going to be looking at starting up the aircraft, of course, from a cold and dark state, but also programming in the FMC, setting up an aircraft for departure, making sure everything's working. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to follow the checklists that are provided by PMDG and are built into Microsoft Flight Simulator. So these checklists right here. So I'm going to be going through these, and we'll start of course with external power, electrical power, and then we will end today's video at the before taxi checklist, because what we're going to do is we're going to get to the point where this aircraft is reversed out, ready to taxi to a 4-hour journey. Now, the journey that we are going to be taking, and this will be in the next video, is going to be the exact same journey that I took when I was testing the 146. So Echo Golf Bravo Bravo to Echo Golf Lima Lima, with the standard instrument departure being the Daventry 4 Foxtrot, taking off runway 33, and then flying to Daventry, then direct to Westgate, joining the Honolulu 1 Hotel approach, with the Bovingdon transition into London Heathrow, where we will be landing runway 27 left. So that is the flight plan for this particular session. Of course, as I said, that will be in the next video, but if you wanted to follow along, you can do so just by taking notes of what I've got, and of course I'll be talking a little bit more about that as we are setting up the aircraft. So anyway, that is enough of me rambling on. We'll get started, and as I said, we'll jump into the aircraft, get it started from a completely cold and dark state to ready to taxi, flight plans filed, and the lot. Alright, as you can see, I did say the aircraft is completely cold and dark. There is nothing switched on. Now, there are a few quirks with the checklist on Microsoft Flight Simulator, and there are a few things I do not think are explained particularly well, or are shown particularly well, or in the right order. So I'm going to go through a few of those and do some things in the wrong order, but I'll obviously make a note of those. So first off, we press Control 0. Just check this, because you are single pilot operation, so it isn't a matter of you're sitting in the seat, co-pilot's going to come along and check that for you. It isn't going to happen. You've got to do it yourself. So this is the emergency landing gear drop, these levers here. So just make sure that that is closed. That actually comes along somewhere in the pre-flight procedure up here, but just check it whilst you are walking into the flight deck before you start anything else. The other thing that I would say to check is just ensure that your position lights, which in some aircraft will be split with strobe lights and position lights separate, or they might call them nav lights. In this aircraft, they are not split. Just ensure that they are set to steady. That's one thing that is quite important before you even connect up anything or do any of the ground power, anything like that. Just make sure that is set steady, because again, on this checklist, it takes a while before you get to that point, and I think that is incorrect. And we'll go through some of the other lights shortly as well. And I think the reason it goes through it in this fashion is because you're expecting a pilot and co-pilot to be doing this at the same time, which means it'll be done twice as quickly. And in a simulator, that is not the case. So that might be a partial reason for why certain things are in the order they are, but I still disagree with a number of things. Anyway, let's get started. So we are going to be doing an external power up, or electrical power up for external power. So we'll be connecting up the external ground power unit, whatever it is, whether that is with a cart or pit power. I think we'll be using pit power for this. We are at a major airport. So we will go ahead and do that. So battery switch closed. In fact, before I go through that, just as a quick note, as I said, the co-pilot, when we do the preliminary pre-flight overhead, the co-pilot will be going through these. The flows generally go in columns. So we'll call this column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then this row down here is the 6th. So that is how we will be operating. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. And I will be referring to certain things in certain columns. So battery switch, column 2, just here, underneath the multimeter select button or select knob. So you flick that on, you'll hear the ticking noise. Do not worry about the ticking noise, or if your aircraft does not have the ticking noise, that is because I've set up analog instruments, and those are the ones making those particular ticking noises. The standby power switch should already have its guard closed, so make sure that that is closed and you'll see the light is out. Alternate flaps is this red one up here. Make sure that that guard is also closed. Windscreen wipers should already be in park. Do not worry about the battery discharge light that has just come up on the multimeter. We'll be sorting that out momentarily. If we now just move over to not 3, if we press Control 1, the landing gear needs to be down, or the landing gear lever needs to be down. And we need to have 3 lights there. You can also check by pressing Control 7. You'll have 3 lights up here as well. They will go through the PSEU. I think they go through the same bus, so it might be that both of those on the proximity switch. By the way, PSEU, proximity switch electronic unit. They probably go through the same thing. Therefore, all you're going to be able to really tell here is if there is a light out. So if there is a, I'll keep pressing that. If there is a light out here, check the one at the top. Make sure that's fine. And obviously you need to make a note of that. Then you'll notice it says ground power available illuminated. That is this blue icon here, or this blue light here. It is not illuminated, and it is not going to be unless you've got ground power ready to connect. So if you have not got this set up, go to your FMC, which is Control 3, go to FS Actions, Ground Services, Ground Power Request. And that is then going to request the ground power. If we just go outside, you'll see it connect up suddenly. There it is. That pit's power right there connects up to this plug point there, and that's going to give us our whatever it is that we need. It's at 115. It's going to be giving us 115 volts. Gives us 116, so just switch this to ground power. 116 volts, that is what we're looking for. That light comes on, flick the switch on, and suddenly the aircraft comes to life. So that is what you need to do there. Just ensure that the source off lights are extinguished. Ground power is obviously on. The gen off bus lights will be on, and you just want to make sure transfer bus lights are extinguished as well, but they should be, because that should be in automatic with the guard closed. So that is your external power sorted. Electrical power for APU, we're not going to be doing that because we're on external power, so we're just going to go to the preliminary pre-flight procedures. Now, this is where things, because you are single pilot operations, things will be a little bit more complicated here, but there is something here that is very important that they miss. Arm the emergency lights. That is in column 3 in the middle. Arm the lights. That's just something that they do much later on in these checklists. Should be much further up. Get those lights armed. Control and 7 brings us up to the upper overhead panel. And what we're going to do is we're going to switch on the IRS. So we're just going to put this, first off, we can just put this into test mode. Make sure that all the lights work. They do. Great. This will also be available in test once we start up the IRS. Switch that into a line. I tend to switch it into a line, wait for it to go to a line from on DC, and then switch it into nav mode. This will take about 7 minutes if you've got it set as real. If you're on a turnaround, I think it can be done within 30 seconds or so, and then as you can see, everything else comes up on the IRS display. seems to be working perfectly fine. The PSEU light, this one down here, needs to be extinguished. Makes sense, because that is responsible for things like takeoff config, landing gear, flap settings. All of that needs to go through that system to tell you that, okay, something's wrong with the aircraft, so you do need to ensure that that is extinguished, otherwise you're not going to have any of those warnings. Service interphone light needs to be off. This GPS switch, or this GPS light here, needs to be extinguished as well. Reverser lights, which is on column 4 on the upper overhead panel, need to both be extinguished. Engine control lights need to be extinguished, and the EEC, which is these guarded switches here, need to be on. That's electronic engine control, so go figure why they need to be on. Passenger oxygen needs to have the guard shut, so it should be normal with the passenger oxygen light extinguished. Obviously the landing gear lights will be on here. Flight recorder needs to be set to normal, and now it says to check these. Now you might find, so those two are working, that's working, there you go. You might find that one of them will not be working. So for example, stall warning test 2 is not working. Do not worry about that. It will take up to 4 minutes for that to actually work. So we'll come back to that a little bit later on. Now we need to check hydraulic quantity and engine oil quantity. Now to do that, it doesn't tell you how to do that. So if we just press Control, is it Control 2? Yes, Control 2, we will come up to the MFD. Now on this MFD, you can have it in different ways. You can have the engines displayed like this, or you'd have it with nothing. You'd have it like that. Make sure you've got it so that you can see the engine oil quantity. So you can see I've got the quantity in percentages here, 99 on the right, 94 on the left. We are fine. To check the hydraulic quantity, press the system button. Hydraulic quantity will come up. There you go, 100%, 100% on A and B. So hydraulic system A and B both have 100%. We are good to go. That is how you check these quantities. And then manual gear extension axis closed. As I said, just do that when you start it, before you do anything else, so you do not have to go back there. This is now where there would be a difference, because as you can see, if I just move down here, when you switch on the parking brake, it says parking brake as needed. Well, I know the chocks are on, but we should probably put the parking brake on anyway. And then it says CDU pre-flight procedure complete. This is where things get a little bit more complicated, because we would be doing this as a captain. We would be doing this whilst the first officer is doing the next flow, and that's all the overhead stuff. There's also confusion there where it's not entirely overhead, but I'll get to that in a moment. So for now, we're just going to do the initialization of this. So we'll do position in it. We are at Echo Golf Bravo Bravo. I'll put that in the reference airport. Gate 42 left. So we'll put that in. Set RS position. If you just go to the next page, grab it from the GPS, stick that in there. Job done. That is all we need to do. There's nothing else we need to do right now on this particular system. We'll come back and fill out the rest of the FMC and program up the computer, program up the FMS later on. So let's go to the preliminary procedure overhead. It has 117 items, and not all of them are overhead, and I'll show you why in a moment. So if we go up here, some of this we've already done. For example, checking the lights here, checking the emergency lights. This is where they would start looking at them. As I said, I think this should be, when you're connecting power up, you should do at least the bare minimum of that, and then just say double check them with the first officer. So we're going to start, and we're going to go through the flows, columns 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then row 6. And that is how we're going to do it. So we'll start up here. Flight control, guards need to be closed. These ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, guards closed. Alternate flaps, this red one here, guards closed. We need to also ensure that on the standby hydraulics, low quantity, low pressure, and standby hydraulics. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. Standby rudder on. All of those are switched off. Those are extinguished. Your damper needs to come on, and this light where it says your damper or damper needs to be extinguished. Also, we need to ensure that this is in the off position, which is the alternate flaps position switch, needs to be off, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 need to be extinguished. But again, this is not very well explained. So the speed trim fail and the Mach trim fail will not be extinguished until the IRSs have been aligned. So for this aircraft, in this case, about 7 minutes after you've started aligning them. By the time we get through these flows, they should be extinguished. Moving on, we can go to the navigation. All of this should be set to normal. 1, 2, 3, 4, VHF nav, IRS, FMC and control panel. Set to normal. Source should be automatic, which is in the middle. Just as a note, I know it looks like it's sort of skewed off to the left. It isn't. That's to the left. That's in the middle. It's just the way we're viewing it, and the sort of field of view is showing it looking like it's over to the left. Down here, we're moving to the fuel panel now. Now the engine valve closed lights and the spar valve closed lights all need to be lit up. However, they must be lit up dimly. So this is dim, that's bright. You can probably just about tell that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are bright whilst those are dim. It is a little bit difficult to see in the simulator. In the real aircraft, it is actually a lot easier to see this. It's much easier to tell what is the difference between something that is dimly lit and brightly lit. You just sort of look up, and whilst you're doing this, you look up and it's just glaringly obvious. In this, I suppose if you had a HDR on or something, maybe it might be a little bit easier, but certainly from where I'm looking, it's visible, but not quite as obvious on first glance. We then need to ensure that the crossfeed switch here is closed, and therefore that blue light there, which is telling us that crossfeed is active or the valve is open, is closed. Filter bypass lights need to be extinguished. Sorry, not closed, extinguished. Fuel pumps all need to be off at this point in time. The low pressure lights on anything that has fuel in it will have low pressure, so ensure that that is okay. So all of these have low pressure, we are perfectly fine. We'll then move on to the next one. Now, at this point, we're happy with our ground power. What I want to do is I'm just going to swap that to APU. Also, on this, I suppose you can just go ahead and mark it. So I'll just say fuel pump low pressure on, that is where we got to last. A couple of things that are not mentioned in here. As I said, I would switch this to APU Gen because we're going to be needing that in a moment. So just ensure that that's on APU Gen. Battery bus is perfectly fine. I'm not really fussed on any of that at this point in time. Battery switch is closed, we know that. Galley power needs to be on. All of these lights, battery discharge should not be happening anymore. If we've got battery discharging, we have a problem because we are connected to the GPU. Or if the APU was on, would be connected to the APU, so that should not be a problem. So all three of these should be extinguished. Standby power guard shut. The drives need to have their, or the drive disconnect switches have their guards also closed, and you should see the drive lights are indicated. Standby power light should be extinguished. We're on ground power, so that is illuminated at this point in time. We do not have to worry about that. Bus transfer switch needs to be closed with the guard down, and you should also notice that the gen off bus will be on for the two engines, but for the APU, if the APU is not active, which it isn't in this case, you will not have a light there. Bus transfer lights should be off, source off lights should also be extinguished. As you can see now, if we just go back to column 1, speed trim fail, Mach trim fail are now gone. The lights have extinguished, which means that this should work. There you go. That now works. So that is just, as I said, you just have to wait a few minutes for that. It does not tell you to wait, but the handbook, I believe, does. The FCOM for Boeing actually does tell you that, you know, that this will take this much time. So we've now done that. Now this is where things change a little, because I know it says overhead panel, but we want to start the APU, and to start the APU we need to ensure that some safety procedures are followed. So we cannot just go ahead and go, oh, let's start up the APU. We need to do some fire checks. So to do the fire checks, we need to come down to, well, the throttle quadrant, which is control 5, and just move slightly lower down to this little panel here. Now this, on the older aircraft, just as a bit of trivia, used to be up here on the glare shield because it was easy to get to. But as autopilots have got more complicated and more buttons are required, LNAV, VNAV, and you've got all these extra displays, flight directors needing these switches and map modes and all of that kind of stuff. Because of all of that, they've had to move it down here, which is still a reasonable place to put it. It's easy to get to. I have tested and pulled one of these in some training before. It is pretty easy to get to, and it's quite obvious where it is, to be honest, because if you've got a problem with your engine, you're going to drop the throttles and it's right there. So that is that. Anyway, that aside, what we need to do is we need to do a couple of tests here. So we've got the extinguisher tests, so we can move this to 1 and we can move it to 2, and what we're looking for is 3 green lights to be illuminated, and that's our test successful on that side. Over here we're going to do a test. We'll first move it to the left hand side, which is in-op fault, and you'll see that those two come up. And if we just go to this, you might have noticed, if I just put that back to in-op fault, you'll notice that overheat detected has come up here, and once it's out of the test, that's fine. So that's good. And what we're looking for now is we're looking for the fire warning to come up. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch over to that side, and as you can see, everything lights up. Fire warning, caution, everything comes up. That is working exactly as we wanted. So that is now tested. So we've done our fire test. That was really important. Now we go back up to the overhead panel, and this is why I said it's not all overhead. Now we go up to the overhead panel, so we'll go through all of that, which we have done. We will, where do we need to go to? Here. We now need to switch on a suitable fuel pump. So the fuel pumps, as we've been through before in column 1. So we'll switch on the aft left hand side fuel pump. That is a fuel pump that Boeing has specifically designated to be the one that starts the APU. The other ones can, but this one is designed specially so that it can take the various APU starts with its whatever the design is. There is some technical specifications for it. I'm not going to get into that, otherwise I'll be at it. Just explaining the APU system and how it works is going to take me 15, 20, 25 minutes, so we're not going to do that. So all you need to know is that this is the one you want to switch on, the one furthest to the left hand side. You then go ahead and go to APU start. So we'll just go ahead and do that, and we'll go start, hold it for 1 second. It actually clicks back out, and we're looking for low oil pressure light to come on there, but we do not want the fault light to come on, nor do we want the overspeed light to come on. Now this APU in particular is a newer style APU. I've used the older style APUs, which are no longer, I guess, on any of these aircraft. I think the NGs, the later NGs, this looks like a later NG by the way, tended to have these newer APUs. The older APUs also had a band, would come up to I think 850 degrees Celsius and then come back down to 400. This will still come back down to 400, and then we had green bands, and that green band sort of told us when we could activate the APU. So we're going to go ahead and start up the APU momentarily, and connect up the APU power momentarily. Now this is why I said select this as APU, select this multimeter as APU gen. So if we come right back to the top of column 2, now says 115 AC volts. That's good. That means our APU is ready to generate power, or is generating power, and is ready to be connected to the buses. APU gen off bus, as you can see, is now initiated. Flick the on switch, and you'll see the source off quickly came up. A couple of lights flashed up. Do not worry about that. That's just it switching through, cycling through from ground power to the APU. Now as a force of habit, I tend to then flick the ground power to the off position like that. So ground power is now disconnected. At this point in time, we're going to take a pause from here, and we're actually going to go ahead and come back down to our CDU. So on our CDU, we're going to go back to the menu, go back to FS Actions, Ground Services, and we're going to release the ground power. Now whilst that's disconnecting, another thing you could do is you could sort out your payload and fuel at this point in time. So for me, I'm going to be running 3300 today, or 3299, and for the payload we are going to be running fairly light, only let's go for 42 passengers. We're at gate 42 passengers there, 2 in first class, and on cargo 500 at the front, 475 at the back. Will that do? No, let's do a little bit. Let's just do a 500 at the back as well. There you go. Does that work for me? I think that works. That works quite nicely. So our zero fuel weight today is going to be 43.3 tons. Maximum takeoff weight is 70.3 tons. Gross weight 46.6 tons. Our trim, or our takeoff trim, is 24.3%. That all looks fine to me. At this point in time, the ground services should have disconnected your GPU, so we are good. What we do want to now do is we want to close the doors. So we're going to release the passenger stairs. The door should close itself with this. So if we just go to doors, you'll see, yep, that door is now closed. And we're going to remove the chocks. There we go. Now, at this point in time, make sure your parking brake is set. You do not want the aircraft to start rolling. So now that we've done that, I'm happy with everything that's going on there. Again, you can just double check your parking brake is set, which mine is. So we'll go back up, and now we're going to continue with the overhead panel. As I said, doesn't quite follow the order. I do things slightly differently. It's sort of my operating procedures, not quite in the same manner. Now, I could probably do that before I start the APU, but certainly I want to get a little bit of this done before that happens. Also, at this point in time, or even with the ground power, make sure you switch on whatever other lights you need. Now, outside we're okay, we do not need any other lights on right now. Inside we're okay, but if this was a night flight, switch on your panel lights, switch on your wing lights, your wheel well lights, your logo lights. Make sure they are all switched on so that your co-pilot, who might be doing an exterior inspection, needs to be able to have a look at this before he comes in or she comes in and does these flows. So again, that's when you power up. Continuing along in the third column, which is the little narrow column here, equipment cooling needs to be set to normal. Nowadays, equipment cooling, by the way, is a lot better. You're a lot better on power than before. CRT monitors that we used to have on the screens used to generate a lot of heat. A lot of cooling was needed. Nowadays, with these digital displays, TFT panels or whatever that we use now, LED panels in some, much nicer. Emergency lights, as I said, should be on. Now this is where they look at it for this. It says guard close. See, as I said, you should have that already done. Fasten seatbelts I'd put to automatic. This is a no smoking sign. I like to have that on. We operate a no smoking policy on all British Airways aircraft. Windscreen wipers are parked, so we are good there. Next line, column 4, we want to switch our window heats on. Window heats can stay on. Probe heats stay off at this point in time unless you've got automatic, which obviously is not something that we have on this aircraft. Anti-ice stays off, and now we want to put the engine hydraulic pumps on. Now the engine hydraulic pumps for hydraulic pump A is on the far left. The one on hydraulic pump B is the far right. So the outboard ones are the engine hydraulics, inboard are electrical hydraulics. Do not worry, you are still going to get low pressure across the board. That is perfectly fine. We are not expecting to be able to have hydraulic pumps operating at this point in time. The engines are not on, electronics are not fully operational. We're not going to have anything there. What we do not want are the overheat lights to be indicated on. So here, the 2 overheat lights need to be extinguished. The 4 low pressure lights need to be on, or will be on. At this point in time, do a check underneath this. Again, it does not mention this. Do a check underneath here. Make sure that everything is closed. So that's your air stairs, your forward entry, your forward service, your forward cargo, your equipment bays, both E and E, left overwing, right overwing, aft cargo, aft entry, and aft service all need to be closed at this point in time, unless you know that they are specifically open. Easy way to check. If this was a 900 series, I believe there would be aft overwing exit 4 forward, aft, overwing, exit. Sorry, left overwing, aft, left overwing, fore, left overwing, or forward, left overwing, and aft, left, right overwing, and forward, right overwing, because it has an extra set of doors. If you are running a 400, or even a, I think 400, maybe a 500 as well, you would not have the overwings ones at all. Those aircraft did not have overwing exits. Do not worry about the cockpit voice recorder. Never really worry about that. Do not worry about the differential pressure or anything like that here. This is not something you set here, and as you can see at the moment, it isn't actually set up and ready to go. We'll then move on to the next one. Again, an easy way to do this is just check these so that you know how far you've got to. Move on to column number 5. Column number 5 is all about air conditioning. This is very different from an 800, which I was used to flying. Flying the 800s, this is extremely different. First off, we do not have duct overheat. We have a trim air switch. We have 2 recirculation fans, and I cannot remember what the warning is for the. What is the warning that is there instead of duct overheat for the 800 series? I'm just thinking, is it just a fault? I think it might just say fault on those. I cannot remember. No, zone temperature or something like that. That's the warning that it has. So you'll have the trim air switch somewhere up here, 2 recirculation valves. There will be a trim air. There'll be a cabin temp or zone temp, 3 zone temp alarms or warnings instead of duct overheat. Now the duct overheat is obviously, as I said, on the older ones, it can take up to, I cannot remember, is it 88 degrees or is that the pack temperature? 88 degrees, and then they will come down. So, but anyway, I'm going off on an aside here. So do not worry about those. You just need those to be extinguished. Ram door full open. Both of those need to be on or lit up. Just to show you as well, just show you where these are on the aircraft, just down here. So these are the ram doors right here. One just there, and one just there. These are the air conditioning base, 1, 2, and then this is the exhaust from that. So that is what we're actually looking at and working with right now. PMDG really have detailed this very, very nicely. Even these strips here, these metal strips for discharging electrical static off the fiberglass nose, which is the reason we do that. Fiberglass, we open that up, it's the radome underneath. You need something that is not metal so it doesn't reflect, but you also need a way to discharge the static so that you do not have scrambled, you don't receive scrambled messages so your signals aren't sort of interfered with. So they've put all of that in. They've even put the vortex generators actually to 3D. And they are the vortex generators, which just reduce cabin noise. Flight deck noise. Anyway, back inside we go. I have shown you that now. So we need to just ensure that those are on, and dual bleed will be coming on in a moment. Recirculation fan needs to go to automatic. Should already be in automatic. You can mess around with the temperatures as you want, but I think actually the passenger cabin is a little bit warm. But let's go ahead and switch on our packs, see if that helps. Left and right packs go on. Isolation valve goes to open. In fact, the packs are already on. Isolation valve will go down to open, and we'll go ahead and switch on our 2 engine bleeds, and then the APU bleed. That goes to dual bleed, and you'll hear the packs starting. They are kind of noisy. Temperatures, to be honest, passenger cabin's a little bit warm, isn't it? I'm going to bring that down a little. Let's just bring both of them down just a bit. There we go. That should bring it down a few degrees. So I just want it down to maybe about 22, 23 degrees maximum. So that looks like that's doing everything we want for it to do. And obviously the APU bleed switch is 1 minute after APU's been started, so we definitely have been through our 1 minute. Dual bleed switch is illuminated, as I said. The trip off lights, which are these ones here, the overheats and all of that are going to be off. So bleed trip off, wing body overheat and pack trip off lights will be off. And then we've got another little set just here: auto fail, off schedule descent, alternate and manual. All of those need to be extinguished. We can then set our cruise altitude, which today for us is going to be flight level 100, so that's going to be 10,000 feet. And landing altitude, you really do not have to set this at this point in time, but you might as well if you know your landing altitude already. For me, it's going to be 100 feet is the closest, because I believe Heathrow is 86 feet, so that is fine. Ensure that this alternate is set into automatic. That is in the middle, not stuck on open or closed. The valve has something in it, and that's fine. So not a problem there. That looks like that's pretty much predominantly done for us here. Now what we have to do is just do row 6, which is going to be landing lights all off, runway lights all off, taxi lights off, APU is on, ignition, engine select switches are on off, or if this was an 800 series that would be automatic. 800, 900 and the maxes would have that automatic. Start selector will go to right today. You can pick left or right, and as I said, lights as you want. And I think we're all right now for lights. We'll probably have to switch on the logo lights at some point. And that is all of that done. Now, the next thing it says is pre-flight procedure, main instrument panel. We do not do this just yet. They have missed something out here, and that is we need to fill out the FMC. We need to sort all of this out. So this is what we're going to do next. So we'll continue on to the route, and if you have a SimBrief account and you've created a flight plan, via SimBrief, go ahead and download it, get that exported, and from there what you want to do is you want to put it into your PMDG wherever you've installed your aircraft. So it's Flight Simulator Community, PMDG, there should be a folder called Flight Plans. Put that in there, and then you can load company routes. So I have a company route set up, so all I'm going to do is put that in. So Echo Golf Bravo Bravo, Echo Golf Lima Lima, company route, and I'll go ahead and request that. That's what it is. I'm not sure if I can put this in. Let's put that. No, I cannot. I cannot put that in just yet, but we're just going to select that. We'll do runway 33, flight number BAW 847, request, and let that do what it needs to do. So it should go ahead. There it goes. Route uplink ready. All we do is press load, and it will load that. Now, whilst we're doing that, we can look at start setting up something up on the main. Oops. Wait. That's not it. Which one is it? That's not it. Where is the tab? That's it. It's number 1. It's already done it, hasn't it? It's done it already. Okay, never mind. We'll do that in a moment. So route data uplink, we're good. We can go ahead and select, again, we've got to select runway 33, let it activate and then select the runway. We'll activate that. There is something weird going on though, and I'll show you this in a moment. If we go to 2, and I'll just do this from this angle for now. Just want you to keep an eye on the ND, and I found something interesting on this. So we're not going to execute that just yet. We'll set up the departure. So we're going to have runway 33, Daventry 4 Foxtrot departure. Now, pay attention to that. Just pay attention to that curve. We'll go ahead and do the arrival as well, because I know what arrival we're going to be doing. It's going to be ILS 27 left, Bovingdon transition. Normally you wouldn't do this until later. Honolulu 1 Hotel. And then we can execute that. We are good to go. So that's ready to go. Now if we go to legs, you'll see we have a route discontinuity. That's perfectly fine. We're just going to go Bovingdon and bring that straight up there. And we'll execute that. This is where something weird will happen. So we're happy with that curve. If we now go to our performance initialization, 0 fuel weight goes in. Planned fuel today is 1.9. and that's going to leave us with 1.5 reserves. Cost index of, let's say, 32. Wants us to fly at 22,000 feet. Now that's fine. Wants us to fly there. We are going to be flying flight level 100. Watch what happens to this, and I have no idea why this is actually happening, because this is not supposed to happen. But if I go ahead and put flight level 100, plug that in there, it just gets rid of, look, Daventry 323 moves all the way. Instead of it being up here, it moves there for some reason, and I am not sure why it's doing that. We will do a in fact, I should probably execute that now. There we go. Using reserve fuel, perhaps. Outside temperature, we're going to leave it as it is. I'm not really fussed about that. We'll do a 22k D rate takeoff. In fact, we'll probably do a 20k D rate takeoff because we are pretty light. So we'll do a 20k D rate takeoff, save some fuel. 88.5 on N1, and you'll see it light up right there in green. That is our target. Great. We'll do a flaps 5 takeoff. Double click on the on this side. So this is by the way, these are called I believe they're called LSKs. So click that twice. 4.69 is our trim. We can probably go ahead and get that trimmed in. So I'll just go ahead and do that. And that looks about right. So I'll just ensure that that's manually trimmed. Anything else that needs to happen here, we just need to put those 3 in. That's perfectly fine. Now we are ready to do our main instrument panel. So we want to ensure that that has been done at the very least. Runway winds, I'm not worried about that. We're perfectly fine there. But this is what we wanted. So there's also a couple of things here. It starts looking at pedestal and all of that kind of stuff. We really should be doing all of this together. So it's got it as split procedures. I think the reason being is the pilot would be filling this in. The co-pilot would then be looking through this, but you need to tune in the right frequencies to be able to do this. So we're going to set the first course is going to be runway heading, which is, I'll go around this way, 326. So 326 is set on that. I'm happy with that. Heading 326 is set. This will be set to V2, which is 117. Initial altitude is 6,000 feet, so I'll set that to 6,000. That's done quite nicely for us. I'll set this to hectopascals. I really should find a way to default that. We want to ensure that Flight Director 1 is on first, then Flight Director 2. That way, it will follow the, well, whatever comes through the Flight Director 1. And by the way, that is also how you get the 2 autopilots. So if you click 1, it will work on this side of the communications. If you click 2, it'll work on the other side of the communications, I believe. So if you want to swap between different autopilot modes, if you want to have different frequencies and all that kind of stuff, you just flick through these. Anyway, make sure that that's set to the master. So if you then do that, you'll see that that is master, that is not. If you were to, by any chance, flick the Flight Director off, you'll see that that goes to master. If you flick this back on now, it will not be the master. So make sure your side is the master switch. Everything else looks perfectly fine up here on the main instrument panel. We can also switch on lights if we wanted to at this point in time. We will continue the rest of this later on. The reason being is that it is now a good idea to set, so we've set all of this, it is now a good idea to get the initial frequency set. So for Birmingham, we are looking for 111.1. That's the initial frequency I want for that. On this one, I'm looking for 115.7. I'll set that, and that I want for a course of 009. The second frequency, because again single pilot operations you want to do this, is going to be 116.4, and this is going to be a 147, so we'll do that. And then this one is going to be a 113.75, And also I'll set the ADF to 33.5, so 335. Set that into active. Transponder can be set right now. I'm just going to select a random number. 3675. There you go. 3675. It is. Okay. So I would do that. That's another thing I would get done. Right. Now that we've done that, we can go ahead and continue with this. Meter switch as needed. No, we're not worried about that. Barometric reference indicator. Yep, I've set it to hexapascals or millibar. We've set that to local altimeter setting. It is 1013 at the moment. VOR ADF switches as needed, but we're on VOR right now, not ADF. Mode selector on map. Now what you could do, one of the things that I do tend to do, although normally I'd do this on this panel here, is I'd switch this to lower one to show me ND like that. I would then go to the FMC, do that. I'd switch this one into a, bear with me a moment, into the plan mode like so, and I'll just step through just to ensure that everything is okay. And as I said, that corner I'm not happy about. Everything else looks okay, and that turns a little sharp as well, so we're not particularly happy about that. And then we've got our missed approach as well, which looks like we're heading towards Epsom at 3,000 feet. So I'm happy with how that's going. I will leave that on plan mode, and I'm just going to switch this back to normal like that, because we will need those. Okay, everything else looks fine. If we want to switch on weather radar and everything, we can. Again, at this point in time, weather radar is not implemented in Microsoft Flight Simulator, so there's no point doing that. I do not have traffic up, so there's no point me switching traffic on. Oxygen, test and set. That's one that I never tend to do. It's down here though. So it says press to test and reset. There you go. I think that's pretty much okay. Electronic flight bag we do not have. We will be having that later on. The clock is fine. Everything here, all the instrument panels look perfectly fine to me. And then we do a full lighting test. Now this one, so we want to do a full lighting test. This is not just the main instrument panel. We'll be doing a test here. Click that. Click and hold, by the way. Click and hold. Click and hold. Click and hold. I think we're okay there. We'll check all the lights down here. Everything looks fine down below. And all the lights on the overhead panel. That all looks fine. And that all is looking fine. Okay, great. That's done. I like to set them on bright. Again, I can show you dim. You can clearly see it on the master caution, and the landing gear lights obviously show it quite well too, but it will do it on pretty much all the lights. There you go. Very easy to see the brightness and dimness on that. So as I said, I like setting that to bright. Lost the word there. The other thing we want to do is we want to do a system test for the GPWS and ensure that all these ground proximity ones are closed, and they are. Right, so you'll hear this talking for a while now.
Pull up.
And there you go, hand of below, glide slope, wind shears come up, great. Terrain warnings, yep, pull up.
Airspeed, low.
Yep, that looks like a fairly successful test. Obviously at the moment it's inoperative because it's going through its test. Once it's done that, that is fine. So you'll see that the in-op light will have to go off. We've done all the tests on the landing gear, so that's fine. Make sure that that is still down. Auto brakes go to RTO, and then if you just press Control 1, I guess on this, you could try Control 2. Would 3 do it now? Would 4 do it now? Yeah, you could do 2. Let's have a look at that. Make sure N1 set is auto, speed ref is on auto. So that is looking perfectly fine. And ensure that all of these lights are not illuminated. Stabilizer, tab out of trim, speed brake arm, speed brake do not arm, takeoff config, cabin altitude, all of those are extinguished, which is perfectly fine. Now what we're going to do, standby instruments set, well they are already set for us. We can just do the final tests checks. Oops. No. It's 4. The final checks here. Obviously, we've set the frequencies. Make sure that they're set to whatever you want. We just want to check this. We'll just press test on the second column. And that's just showing us that that is discharging. That's the cargo fire. So we're just discharging the cargo fire. Weather radar is right there. Does not work. This is the auto land system. Not really too fussed about that. That's auto throttle 3 on, but yeah, we can just do whatever you want on it. I'm not really messing around with this at this point in time. I have used the auto land system before. It's not something I generally tend to use. I will now put this into TA only, I guess. We are going to be starting up the aircraft momentarily. Everything else here looks fine. No lock fails. That's closed. That's all looking fine. I guess I could probably put some lighting in this now. There we go. Let's just get some lights up on this because it is starting to get darker. And that's great. Okay. Let's have a look outside. It is starting to get a little bit darker, so I'm going to now switch on the logo light. And just to show you outside. By the way, one of the things I really like about this is that, well, first off, you see the light. But secondly, you see like this light cone when it's dark. And it's very impressive. The light cone is very, very impressive. How far are we through this? 51 minutes. Well, we're just about to the before start procedure, but there are a couple of things we need to do. Namely, we need to push back. So, just as a pre-flight checklist, we have tested the oxygen. Navigation, everything's sorted. Window heats are on. Pressurization mode is on automatic. Flight instruments, check heading and altimeter. Checked. 6,000 feet there. Altimeter 330-ish feet, which is right for where we are. Compass is correct. It is marked the right heading, 327. That looks right to me. Engine start levers on cut-off, which they are, and parking brake is set. We're ready for the before start procedure, except we're not, because we need to do a pushback. So for the pushback, what we do is just go to the menu, FS actions, pushback. Distance to taxi line, I think, is a little bit longer. So we've got standard L. Turn the nose to the left, please. Distance to taxi line, I think, would be 330 from here, I think. Chocks have been removed. We can select the tug. And so once we select the tug, it will give us an option to start. There you go. So we'll just do start. I wish we had British accents on this.
We've been cleared for push and start, tail to the right.
Copy that, ready for push, tail right. Release brake, please.
As you can see, it's already connected. This is where I think the Zebo mod sort of has an advantage, I think. So let's go ahead and just sit ourselves here. There's something I'm doing this intentionally. I'll zoom in a little bit more. Just sit here. Add a little bit of focus. Autofocus. Yeah, let's try autofocus. Let's see if this autofocus does what I want it to do. And drone follow mode needs to be switched off. This is what I'm doing. So we'll go ahead and do that. Also, I just want to take a screenshot of that because that actually is quite a nice, quite detailed. Now, here we go. So we'll release the parking brake.
Brakes released.
And let's see if this actually pushes back. So far, nothing. I cannot hear anything. Oh, there it goes. Aircraft is being pushed back. Fantastic. The wheels are spinning like crazy. That's a lot of wheel spin, that's for sure. That is a lot of wheel spin. But that aircraft is definitely being pushed back. And it looks great. I'll just try and focus on it, that is. And move a little bit closer. Move back up here. So the pushback does work. I still think they need to improve the pushback, but it does work. And let's have a look at whether I got that line right. Oh, I think I might have. So I thought it was. I did think it wasn't the 295 feet or whatever it showed. It looked like it was a bit more. In fact, I think I may not have got it quite right. It's not quite right. It's probably another. I think it's about another 10 feet or so, isn't it? And it sets it up like that, so it's not quite 90 degrees, but that's okay. Or well, it wasn't, the pushback wasn't quite 90 degrees. I can now put the parking brake back on, and now the tug should in theory drive away, but it doesn't. So all you do is you just get rid of the tug. There you go, and we're good. Now we're going to start the aircraft up. Now obviously if we were doing the pushback, we would probably be starting the engines whilst we're doing the pushback, but I just wanted to show you the actual pushback. So let's go through the before start procedure. That's been set to V2. LNAV, VNAV need to be armed if needed. Well, we're not going to arm them just yet. Initial heading has been done. Exterior doors all closed. Fuel panel has been set. No, it hasn't. There we go. Fuel panel has not been set. What we do, switch on all of the fuel pumps. Electric hydraulic pumps need to now go on. Low pressure lights will go off, because now we're using the electricity. Anti-collision light goes on. This is to tell people that we are preparing to start the aircraft, and you'll see the red flashing light. Red flashing lights on some aircraft, it is a little bit more orange, which is perfectly fine. In fact, I think Boeing actually notes it as being orange. So there you go. Trim has been set. Before start checklist. Flight deck door closed and locked. Fuel check, quantity check. Pumps are on. Quantity 3.2 tons. We're fine. Passenger signs on auto. That's done. Windows are locked. MCP speed 117, heading 326, altitude, initial altitude 6,000, takeoff speed 106, V1 106, rotate 109, V2 117. CDU pre-flight is complete. Rudder and aileron trim are set to 0. Taxi and takeoff briefing complete. We are ready for engine start. For engine start, all we need to do, and this is where we're going to be ending today. Engine start, air conditioning packs need to go to off. So right and left pack will go off. There we go. Isolation valve will stay open at the moment. We'll select the right engine. So we'll start with, well, let's start with the right engine, engine number 2. We'll set that to ground, and then we're looking for between 20 and 25% on ground on the N2 power. Now for this, it's probably helpful for you to press that twice so that it shows up on the lower panel. Then once it shows up on the lower panel, there you go, 22.5. I'll put that in. We can see the aircraft, or we'll go back and see the engine start, or hear the engine start. There you go, engine starting quite nicely. Yeah, fairly happy with that. Okay, and inside, if we just go back up to Control 6, you'll see that this will click out back to off. So the start selector will switch to off. The drive lights will go out because now we have drive. Now we'll just go ahead and select the other one. It's back to, is it 4 or 5? 5. Control 5 brings this up. So we now just wait on the N2 to reach about 20 to 25 once again. Try not to hold it at 25. Then you'll end up with, I believe, what we call a hot start. There we go. Engine is now coming up, and then we need to do the before taxi procedures. And this is, we'll do the before taxi procedures and we end this video. So the reason I'm doing that is because I want to show you the rest of the things that need to be done up here. So we're just waiting for this to click out, which it will momentarily. I can hear the engine spooling. 3, 2, 1, click. Oh, not yet. Slightly off. 2, there it goes. Right, so that is now done. Now what we do, just check the generator. Check generator 1, check generator 2 by flicking through the multimeter. That's fine. and we will go ahead and connect Gen 1, Gen 2. Do not worry about sudden lights that flicker. That's just because we're changing the bus from the APU bus to the engine buses. So there's a power switching through. Now you can see the hydraulics have pressure on the engine as well. Probe heats go on. That's top of column 4. Anti-ice as needed. We do not need them. Packs can come back on to automatic. APU bleed switch will need to go off. And something that they do not mention here. You want to switch off the APU now. I believe on this one, you now switch off the APU. So, go ahead and switch off the APU. Taxi light comes on. Engine start switches will go to continuous, like so. If we had an 800 series, they'd stay on auto, which is where I believe the off switch is. I think they're on auto. There is an auto here, not continuous. Engine start levers on idle, that's fine, we know that. Set takeoff flaps, which for me is 5. And we'll have a look at that. You'll see the flaps are in, yep, they're in transit, and in fact you see leading edge flaps are actually now moving. You can have a look from the outside. There they go. Very, very nice. And in fact, that's potentially another. I know I'm taking a few thumbnails, but that's potentially another thumbnail right there. Just something about that angle. It's not quite there, but actually maybe there's something on the zoom that's not quite right. There is some. I see potential of a photograph somewhere here. I really do see potential of a photograph. I'll just take one there. But I think that is us done. So we are ready to go. That has gone from a full cold and dark startup, or from full cold and dark state, all the way to ready to fly. So the next thing we're going to be obviously doing is we'll be doing the, we've done the checklist. We'll be, in fact, let's put the isolation valve into automatic. There we go. That will do. We've done the checklist. Everything is running. Everything is set up. We can now switch on lights if you want. If you need some lighting, go ahead and switch all of that on. And if not, so for example, I might put on a little bit of lighting here. But if not, we are, as I said, good to go. So that is where I'm going to end this video. Hopefully that was useful. Hopefully I managed to explain quite a few things to you, and explained where perhaps the checklists do not tell you certain things. So if you did like the video and it was useful to you, or if it was useful to you, please do click the thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. Those likes show me what I am and am not doing correctly sometimes. Obviously there are people who will just press the dislike button for no reason, but if videos receive lots of likes, I know I'm doing something correctly. Also subscribe to the channel. Of course, there is going to be a part 3 to this where we will be doing the flight. We'll fly from here, Echo Golf Bravo Bravo, to Echo Golf Lima Lima, and then I'll give you my final thoughts on this aircraft. If you can do so, please do consider supporting me on Patreon at www.patreon.com/ecgadget. Your support would be massively appreciated. It would really help me out, and also you can find me on social media at ecgadgetlp for both Twitter and Instagram. That is all from me, and I'll see you next time in Microsoft Flight Simulator for part 3, where I actually fly this aircraft. Do I remember how to fly it? I certainly hope so. I guess we'll have to find out.